Welcome to the Expedition of Hope. Written by L.L. Smith. Narrated by L.L. Smith. Chapter 1. Mission Statement. The smell of multicultural foods flooded the city streets. No nose could avoid the smell, a smell that would cause its best friend hunger to follow throughout the night. The launch celebration hosted the best party that could ever be experienced in town square. The featured speeches could even be enjoyed in the comfort of people's own homes as they blared through the entire town on a massive public announcement system, and a 100% live newsfeed made it impossible not to watch. Most every year had the same speakers. A slew of diplomats, bureaucrats, and large businessmen were each given 30 minutes in which to spew their jargon. Those speeches went largely unheard. It was Captain Tom's 9 o'clock statement that would capture the town's attention. Tom was given all the time he needed to address what he saw fit. Asher dashed through the crowds with his father close at his side. He was hoping to locate his black-haired queen. He searched through the fields of people. Each head of black hair caught his attention. Each one would soon lead to disappointment. But Asher's determination would not be dashed. After swimming through a sea of people for 30 minutes, Asher's jean jacket finally collided with another gray jacket. Once more, the hands were locked prior to eye contact. And just like that, the long search was over. "Oh, hey, Mr. Harris. How are you today?" Courtney was surprised to see Don tagging along behind Asher. "Just fine, Courtney. Are you enjoying the celebration?" Don dug his hands deep into his pockets, trying to look casual. "Oh yeah, the food is just amazing as ever. Can't wait for Captain Tom's speech this year. They're always so uplifting." Courtney sparked up with legitimate excitement. "I sure hope you stick around. Maybe some of that excitement will rub off on Asher." Don and Courtney chuckled a bit at each other. "Okay, Dad, if I needed an awkward and yet insulting third wheel to this date, I would have just invited Miss Twitch." "All right, I'll leave you two alone. But I was hoping you may know where your father is, Courtney." Don patted Asher's shoulder as he prepared to leave. "Yeah, the same place he is every year, slaying Murphy's taco stand." Courtney was embarrassed by her father's predictability. "Thanks. I'll let you two have your alone time now." Don nodded his head and jogged back through the crowd. "I swear, I never thought he'd leave." Asher snapped as he watched his dad jog away. "I don't see why you're so bothered by him. He seems like a great guy to me." Courtney shrugged her shoulders, confused by Asher's irritation. "I know he's great and all, but something about him still upsets me. Probably because he has to be so involved with this launch nonsense that I hate so much." The couple started walking as their conversation continued. "I think you shouldn't be so hard on him. After what happened to your mom, you know he's suffering too." Courtney wanted to bite her tongue as the conversation instantly stopped and gave way for a long, awkward pause. Finally, Asher said, "I vote for a subject change." Relieved, they continued walking and talking about anything but Asher's parents. The night was winding down and the hour had approached its destination, pointing straight at the 9 in its numerical racetrack. Only a single speaker's presence could ease all the minds gathered around the stage. Those who were lucky enough to see the man himself were those who needed to see him the most that night. Those who might only hear his words one way or another will be satisfied with that reassurance. Punctual as ever, at exactly 9 p.m., Tom ascended the stage stairs, dressed in a clean white captain's uniform, peppered with jingling, polished metals. His uniform helped his mustache stand out as he stood at the podium, gazing upon the public, awaiting the appropriate time to speak. Don followed close behind Tom, Don's black suit and tie being the needed contrast to Tom's. Don stood straight with his broad shoulders upright. His 6'1" stance and bulky stature was security enough for Tom. His smooth face was a light beige color with hazel eyes and salt and pepper hair that sent mixed messages about his age. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tom's voice captured the very words from everyone's mouth at that moment. With one phrase, Tom had become everyone's focal point. Tom's focus could not be any more off topic at that moment, however. All eyes were on him that night, but there was only one thing Tom sought after in this crowd. It didn't take him long to find the red hoodie in this immense crowd. It wasn't hard, as the red hoodie was always in the same place. This made the 3rd year that this man attended the speech, and each year he stood in the back right corner of the crowd. This mysterious man in a red hoodie would spend the entirety of Tom's speech signing directly to Tom. He stood much taller than most in the crowd, allowing his hands to reach above them. Most of the man's signs were along the same lines. "Tell the truth, Tom. Stop lying. We know better." These were the most haunting of the signs that the man's fingers would form. However, from time to time, he got off track, signing things like, "Can you read this? Why won't you follow me?" And Tom's personal favorite, "Nod twice if you understand me." to which Tom would respond with a single head nod. We are all part of a mission 72 years in progress. Tonight, let us allow our hearts to be with those who came before us, those who got us this far. We especially need to be there for the original captain, Frank D'Angelo. We all need to help his fight with Alzheimer's. As many of you may know, at 93 he is the last living member of our original launch team. Even though it's 2 years overdue and we still haven't accomplished our goals, there is no reason to fret. We need to press on with the dream that Frank and everyone else has prepared for us. A mission of this magnitude, as you can imagine, is impossible to predict with 100% accuracy. However, I promise that we are the chosen generation, and that we will see our goals accomplished. I promise you that. Just as Tom had delivered the same news he always had, the excitement was over. The party had officially ended with Tom's vote of confidence, and all began to walk themselves home. All except for Tom's dreaded red hoodie, who at this point signed a single phrase repeatedly. Lies. His hands jolted violently as he signed this phrase. Tom just stood and watched the man. What perplexed Tom the most was the fact that no one else ever seemed to notice. For the past 3 years, this man had been able to elude everyone except Tom. Just like that, the most exciting moment of the year was once again over for the 72nd time. Everyone would return to their mundane lives, waiting for that pivotal day, a day that seemed to only get further and further away. Some still shared that false sense of hope that Tom satisfied. Others, like Asher, grew to hate the whole situation and wished they hadn't been a part of this mission entirely. No matter what stance anyone took, two things were consistent. There was nothing they could do to change their fates, and they would have to see this through to the end. Before too long, the next day would come soaring in, much sooner than Ash could ever have wanted. He would find himself sitting through another one of Miss Twitch's dismal lectures. Today was the first day of student presentations on the subject of their people's mission. After 3 weeks of speech preparation, the first two presenters still managed to fill their speeches with ums and ands. Asher rested his chin on his closed fist as his boredom built from listening to his classmates' poorly prepared speeches. Thank you, Cindy. Can I have Asher present next, please? The class eased into their chairs. They had dodged selection yet again. Asher had been called on, but was too involved in blocking his students' boring speeches out to notice. Asher! Mrs. Twitch's shrill shout snapped Asher right out of his distant mindset. Miss Twitch, I can't, Asher started. Nope. No excuses, Asher. This presentation is worth almost half your grade. I suggest you participate in this assignment. Miss Twitch stomped out Asher's complaints. After a few seconds, Asher dragged himself out of the chair. He knew what he had to say, and he hated it. He did not want his fury towards the mission they all had to be a part of to offend his friends, and certainly not Miss Twitch. He worked his way up to the front of the classroom, all eyes on him. He paused, still trying to come up with a clever excuse to slide out of giving the speech. Nothing came. So there he was, prepared and as ready as he would ever be. You all know the story, but I have to say it to help you understand my point of view. 87 years ago, George Degard discovered a distant planet with conditions similar to that of Earth's, a planet that would be aptly known as Degard. The Earth, at this time, was deteriorating, its one-time flourishing environment rapidly moldering into unbreathable air and putrid water. Consequently, soon after Degard's discovery, construction began on the space shuttle B-72-800, renamed Hope. As you all know, this shuttle was big enough to accommodate 1,500 trained astronauts and their families through space for a 70-year journey to establish a new Earth-like society on Degard. That space shuttle would take 9 years to be completed. It was a city within itself, with streets and homes and businesses and schools. No one believed such a structure could be built, but there it was. With it, a community of astronauts were chosen to travel through space on an expedition from Earth to this new planet. Asher paused a moment. Their mission was to live on this ship and procreate until the day came that they finally reached Degard. Once there, they'd be free to live their lives out on this new planet, and humanity would be allowed to flourish. Once they had settled in, they would send word back to Earth of their success, and those on Earth could send more people their way, thus saving humanity from Earth's decaying atmosphere. Asher looked through the crowd to judge his peers' attention levels. He had attracted a few curious eyes. Most students, however, were preoccupied, watching the gum their fingers played with, studying the clock on the wall, staring at their tapping feet, or watching their own eyelids. Each of those original astronauts knew they most likely wouldn't live to see the new planet, and that it'd be in fact their grandchildren who'd accomplish their goal. Here we are, 72 years since launch date. That's 2 years past the predicted landing date, and we still have nothing to show for it. We're still stuck here, living on hope, looking for the guard. More importantly, we're being forced to continue their dream, to which we have no attachments. How far overdue does this mission have to go before we question its legitimacy? How is it fair to force us to follow a dream that our grandparents had? Suddenly, Asher was distracted as he noticed the intent eyes that now followed his every motion. Earth's atmosphere may have been plagued with disease, smothered by overpopulation, and experiencing a century-long drought, but America was once revered as a free country. I find it unfair for the leaders of this space mission to condemn our entire existence to one measly space expedition. I just fail to see how people in our society can sit by and be okay with that. Asher concluded his speech and refocused on the sea of classmates seated before him. He was distraught to see 3 raised hands attempting to capture his attention. Yes, Bradley? What would you like to say? Asher simply called on the student nearest to him. Here's how I see it, Asher. We're in a giant space shuttle city eons away from the nearest planet, and possibly on the verge of reaching our destination. I don't know what else you plan to do. I mean, we haven't much of a choice. I'm not thrilled about the whole thing myself, but sitting here whining about our life isn't going to get us anywhere either. We may as well make the most of what we're given. Bradley's comment was surprisingly mature. I understand where you're coming from. I hate to sit and whine myself, but it just feels so utterly frustrating. Those were the only words Asher could find to combat Bradley's comment. Cynthia, have you got something else to add? Asher called on the student most likely to throw him a bone. I must say, from being around you, it sure seems as though that whining is really the only thing you enjoy doing. Cynthia's comment was met by a roar of laughter from the entire class. Please keep comments specific to the speech. I will not accept personal jabs at any of my students. Miss Twitch attempted to regain control of the situation. Okay, Carlos, you still have something to say? Asher tried to change the subject by calling on the last raised hand. Yeah, I would. The stance you take sounds a lot like that rebellious group that calls themselves Liberation. Are you a member of their organization? Carlos's question, however strange it was well received by the class. I may share a lot of views with their organization, but I refuse to join any organization that fights against my father. My loyalty to him is bigger than my ideals. With that final answer, Asher heard the bell come to his rescue, and he saw his classmates flee the room. End of chapter.